There's a certain kind of grief no one prepares you for. The grief of watching something slowly fade, not because it died, but because it changed. The truth is, we don't just mourn people, we mourn moments. We mourn versions of ourselves we'll never be again. We mourn friendships that grew distant, lovers who grew apart, dreams we once held so tightly that now feel like strangers. We live in a world obsessed with keeping things, keeping relationships, keeping youth, keeping certainty. But life was never meant to be kept. It was meant to be felt, and then let go. Nothing is permanent, not the good, not the bad, not the joy that makes your chest feel full, nor the pain that makes it hard to breathe. Everything we touch is on its way to becoming something else. Everything we love is already, in some quiet way, beginning to leave us. And that's not tragedy, that's truth. It's the nature of existence. The river flows, the seasons shift, the stars die and are born again. In this video, I don't want to just talk about impermanence. I want to feel it with you. I want to tell stories that remind you how temporary this all is. Not to make you sad, but to help you live better, to let go with softer hands, to love with fuller hearts, to finally stop trying to hold what was never ours to keep. This isn't just a message, it's a mirror for all the moments you thought would last and didn't, for all the pain you thought would break you and passed, for all the joy you didn't know you were living in until it was gone. We are all guilty of whispering forever into things that were only meant to be temporary. We fall in love and imagine a lifetime. We make promises under the intoxication of the present moment. We take pictures not just to remember, but to try and freeze time, as if time could ever be tamed. But forever is not a promise life makes. It's a story we tell ourselves to feel safe. Children believe their parents will always be there until they're not. Lovers believe passion will never fade until silence replaces spark. We hold on to moments thinking they will last, but they're already slipping through our fingers the second they arrive. It's a painful truth. We don't lose things because we're careless. We lose them because everything is built to change, and no amount of clinging can stop the unraveling. The illusion of forever is comforting, but it's just that, an illusion. Time doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care for your plans, your desires, or your fear of change. It simply moves. It softens your laughter. It quiets the noise of your youth. It feeds the voices you once heard daily into echoes. But here's the paradox. Time heals, but it also steals. It heals the wounds we thought we'd never survive. And in doing so, it steals the intensity of what once was. It makes yesterday feel distant, even if it was just last week. It turns soulmates into strangers, and once vivid memories into vague outlines. We often say, I miss the old days, but we rarely understand what we're actually missing. We're mourning versions of ourselves, naive, hopeful, unbroken, and yet, in this cruel softness, time teaches us. It shows us that holding on too tightly hurts more than letting go. That impermanence isn't punishment. It's what makes the present so breathtaking. Because when you realize nothing is permanent, you finally start paying attention. There are faces you swore you could never forget, eyes you stared into and thought you had found home, voices that were so familiar they felt like your own. But then life happened. Distance grew louder than promises. Time brushed away the intensity, and slowly, without warning, even the people who once meant everything became just a memory. You scroll through old photos and feel something you can't name. Not sadness, not nostalgia, but a hollow ache, like trying to hold water in your hands. It slips. It always slips. Some people leave quietly. Some leave with storms. But most of them, they just dissolve. You forget their laugh. You forget the exact shade of their eyes. You forget the way they looked at you when they swore they'd never walk away. This is not betrayal. It's not failure. It's life, because people are not permanent, and neither are the versions of them we carry in our hearts. Just as the earth moves through seasons, so do we. There are springs in our soul, times of hope, rebirth, growth. There are summers, fiery, wild, passionate moments we wish could last forever. But they don't. Autumn creeps in with quiet reflection. We begin to let go of dreams, of people, of old selves. And then comes winter, cold, silent, unforgiving. The mistake we make is thinking we'll stay in one season forever, that the joy will always be this bright, or the pain will always be this sharp. But you are not stuck. You are moving. You are changing. And just like the trees shed their leaves without fear, you, too, must learn the art of surrender, because nothing is permanent, not even the heaviness, not even the light. There are places you once called home, walls that echoed with your laughter, floors that knew your barefoot steps, corners where you cried in silence. You may not live there anymore, but sometimes a smell, a breeze, or the way the sun hits a window can pull you back so violently, you forget it's only a memory. It's strange how something that felt so permanent can now be someone else's reality. The truth is, we don't just outgrow places. We outgrow versions of ourselves that only made sense inside those walls. And maybe that's the bittersweet part. You can never fully return to the rooms that held your past without confronting the person you used to be. But you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to close the door, even on what once felt like sanctuary. Because sometimes leaving isn't abandoning, it's becoming. We cling so tightly to the idea that we're in control of how life unfolds, of who stays, of what tomorrow brings. We plan, we predict, we pretend to know what's coming. But life is not a script we get to write in full. It's a wind we try to harness with bare hands. Control is comforting, yes, but it's also an illusion. Because one phone call can change everything. One accident, one betrayal, one shift in the universe can unravel all your plans and remind you, you are not the master of time. And that realization, it hurts, but it also frees. Because once you stop trying to micromanage the unknown, you begin to dance with it. You start trusting that the ground beneath you may shake, but you will not fall through. Let go. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that nothing is permanent, especially not control. No one ever tells you that people can be seasons, that some will bloom in your life like spring, colorful, hopeful, full of warmth, only to fall away with time. Just as summer fades quietly into autumn, we want permanence in people. We crave constancy in faces, in names, in voices that once made us feel alive. But people change, circumstances shift, priorities realign, and suddenly, the one who felt like home now feels like a foreign country you don't speak the language of anymore. It hurts because love doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just transforms into memory. But just like you don't curse the trees for losing their leaves in the fall, you shouldn't curse people for walking away when their season is over. They came. They mattered, they taught you something, and they left when their chapter in your story was complete. That doesn't make the story any less beautiful. You've changed, maybe not in ways others can see, but in thoughts, in beliefs, in dreams. You never say out loud. Look in the mirror long enough, and you'll realize you're no longer who you were a year ago, or even last month. And that's terrifying, because if you are not fixed, what is? You may miss the version of you who was more naive, more hopeful, more reckless, or perhaps more loving. But the person you are now is wiser for the ache, stronger for the fall, softer from the scars. And this too, this version, will not stay, because nothing is permanent. Not your body, not your mindset, not your fears. The mirror lies when it tells you, you are just one thing. You are thousands of versions, constantly becoming. And maybe the real purpose of life isn't to remain the same, but to embrace the sacred art of evolving. Time doesn't knock. It doesn't wait for your readiness. It doesn't pause when you beg it to. It just moves, quietly, ruthlessly, beautifully. One day, you're holding someone's hand, and the next, you're holding memories you never asked for. You tell yourself you'll call tomorrow. You'll fix things next week. You'll finally say what's in your heart. But time doesn't care about your schedules. It has its own rhythm, its own end. The harshest truth is this: there are no forevers in time, only borrowed moments. So, what you have now, what breathes beside you, what makes you smile today, might not be there tomorrow. Not because life is cruel, but because time is honest, and it teaches us that impermanence is not punishment. It's a whisper. Cherish what is here. Now, there are nights when pain wraps itself around your chest, so tightly you forget how it felt to breathe without it. Loss, betrayal, loneliness, they all come in waves so heavy, you're sure they'll drown you. But here's the truth no one tells you when you're breaking. Pain is not eternal. It may linger longer than you want, sit in your bones, echo in the songs you used to love, but it won't stay. Pain is not a residence, it's a visitor, and like every visitor, it leaves when it's done saying what it came to say. You won't wake up healed, you'll wake up hollow, but lighter, and that's where healing begins, not in the loud triumphs, but in the quiet moments, when you realize the wound no longer owns you. Even pain bows to impermanence. Letting go is not weakness. It is one of the most courageous acts of love, the kind you give yourself when life asks you to move forward. But letting go doesn't always come with clarity. Sometimes it feels like you're walking away from something that once made your heart feel like home. Still, not everything that feels like home is meant to be lived in forever. People change, circumstances shift, and sometimes the version of you that loved them is not the same version of you that now stands in front of the mirror. Scarred, wiser, softer in some places, harder in others. Letting go is not forgetting. It's not erasing the chapters or burning the pages. It's simply closing the book. When you finally realize the story no longer fits your soul, it hurts. God, it hurts. But that pain, it's the sound of growth. It's the shedding of old skin. Letting go is not the end. It's the beginning of becoming someone new, someone honest, someone whole, someone who finally realizes that even endings can be beautiful when you're brave enough to embrace them. Nothing is permanent, not even the you that you were yesterday. And maybe that's the most hopeful truth of all. Because if nothing is permanent, then neither is your doubt, your fear, your sadness, or your self-sabotage. You get to begin again. You get to choose every single day who you want to be. Not because the world gives you permission, but because time is always moving and change is always available. The storm inside you will pass. The regret that once crippled you will become a soft whisper in the wind, and slowly, without announcement, you'll feel yourself becoming someone who is no longer anchored to what once broke you. This is your freedom. This is your rebirth. You were never meant to stay stuck. You were meant to keep blooming, even through the darkest winters. So take the next breath. Take the next step. Begin again. The truth that nothing is permanent can either haunt us or heal us. It depends on how we choose to carry it. From The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, we learn that freedom begins when we stop clinging. Singer writes, "You have to understand that it is your attempt to get special experiences that makes you miss the actual experience of life. Let that land. The more we try to grip life, the more it slips through our fingers." From When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, we're reminded that it is in the very falling apart where life begins anew. Chodron teaches, to be fully alive, fully human, and completely awake is to be continually thrown out of the nest. You're not meant to stay comfortable. You're meant to evolve. From Everything is Fucked by Mark Manson, there's a raw truth. We suffer for the simple reason that suffering is biologically useful. It is nature's preferred agent for inspiring change. Even our suffering is not permanent. It's a bridge, a necessary fire that burns away what no longer belongs. So, if today you find yourself holding on to a person, a version of yourself, a dream, or a mistake, remember, everything shifts. The worst moment doesn't last, and neither does the best. But what stays, what truly endures, is how you choose to show up in the middle of it all. Breathe into the now. Be kinder to your transitions. You are not broken. You are unfolding. If this message reached somewhere deep inside you, don't just scroll past it. Share it with someone who's carrying silent weight. Let them know they're not alone. Comment below what part of your life you're learning to let go of. Let's build a space where truth doesn't have to hide. Subscribe to Inner Verse for weekly storytelling that feels like a warm hand on your shoulder when you need it most. And remember, nothing is permanent, especially not your pain. So keep going. You're not done yet.